Voila. So hello, everyone. Welcome at Rizzoli Bookstore. Welcome for another event with us. I'm glad that you are so many tonight. I'm really happy to host this event tonight. I'm Livia Senic. I'm the store manager of Rizzoli Bookstore. And tonight we are presenting Distant Fathers by Marina Jarre, translated for the first time in English by New Vessel Press. We will have here tonight, as you can see, discussing the book, the translator and Goldstein and the curator Marta Barone, together with Michael Wise, but from the New Vessel Press. So I will let you soon enjoy the conversation. I want to give you just few technical information about the events. We will have our guest discussing the book for around 30 minutes, and then we will have a question time. You will be able to ask questions to our guest through the chat tool on the bottom line of your screen. We will give you then some technical information about how to purchase the book, which is available on our store. I want to just let you know about Marina Jarre. Was born in Riga and lived in Italy from 1935 until her death at the age of 90 in 2016. Cultural identity, personal character, psychology, and autobiographical themes are central elements of her novels and stories. We have then discussing with us, as I told you, the translator and Goldstein has translated the Neapolitan novels and other works from Elena Ferrante, as well as writings by Primo Levi, Giacomo Leopardi, Pierpaolo Pasolini, and Anna Maria Ortese. She's a former editor at the New Yorker. We have then Marta Barone, is the author of the novel Città Sommersa and is overseeing the republication of Marina's Jarre's writing in Italy for Bompiani. And of course, our publisher, Michael Wise for New Vessel Press. So enjoy the event now and welcome to our guest.
Thank you very much, Livia. We're grateful to you and to Rizzoli Bookstore for hosting this event. Of course, we would all prefer to be in those beautiful high-ceilinged rooms downtown New York on Broadway at Rizzoli instead of our little Zoom cubicles here. But it's through the magic of Zoom that we're able to bring together Anne Goldstein here in New York and Marta Barone in Turin. We're grateful to Marta for being up so late tonight to discuss Marina Jarre with us. Distant Fathers was first published in Italy in 1987. And although it's perhaps Marina Jarre's finest work, and the Italian author Claudio Magris calls her writings true small-scale essential masterpieces, she's never before been translated into English. Marta, who, as we heard, has been overseeing her republication in Italy by Bompiani, writes in her introduction to Distant Fathers that, quote, "It's time to sweep away the dust and give Marina Jarre, who died in 2016 at the age of 90, her rightful place in Italian literature." So we're going to begin with Anne's going to read a short excerpt from her wonderful translation that will give you a sense of the distinctiveness of Marina Jarre's writing and what makes this memoir, Distant Fathers, so special.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, this is from the first part of the book. This is the place without a name, the same as other places, and my time the same as others' time. I will no longer escape. When as a child, I imagined running away from home, Italy was the country I would have liked to escape to. Italy, my mother's native country, where it was always warm and you spent long hours in the garden. So what if my summer vacations came with diarrhea because of too much fruit picked unripe off the trees? My sister and I were born in Riga. A photograph of me at 5. Hair tied in 2 thick pigtails next to my tiny face. I'm standing in a pretty striped velvet dress, chosen like the others by my mother, with a pinafore over it, beside the dollhouse, one hand on the flat roof, holding my doll Willie, who's next to the cage of Pippo the canary. I have a hint of a gentle, stubborn smile, and I'm gazing into the distance, sideways. In another photograph, I'm looking away again with the same half smile above the small, obstinate chin, sitting next to my mother and my sister, who's looking straight ahead with shining, curious eyes. My mother, in profile, turned toward me, smiles a proud, emotional smile. She has 2 tiny wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. My self-consciousness was tied to my fears, my awareness of others to my sister's appearance in my life. We're going to the Kaisergarten. I walk with my hands resting on the bars of the carriage with my sister in it. I think I'm pushing it, and I remember distinctly the glint of the bars at the height of my head. Behind me walks the Schwester. Naturally, she's the one pushing the carriage, but I think, now they'll see me. They'll say, what a good girl she is, taking her little sister out for a walk. We meet someone and stop, and that someone up above me says, what eyes this child has. They really look like 2 black plums. I know right away that my sister's eyes look like black plums. The word plum has a very tender sound in German, and that same sound is repeated by my mother when later the Schwester tells her the story. At night, I dream of walking on the maple leaves on that same sidewalk. Next to me walks a tiny, soft, whitish being. I crush it, and crushing it gives me an immense sensation of power. I know that it's alive and that I can kill it, that it's at my disposal. Another time, I find a lot of them on a low wall, and again I crush them. There's a large stain where I crushed them. Awake, I'm frightened by these dreams. Awake, I can't hurt anyone. I can't even look at the coachman who whipped the horses. They've told me you have to kill a horse that falls and breaks its leg, because if a horse falls, it can't get up again. I couldn't have been much more than 2 when we walked to the Kaisergarten, because there's only 13 months difference between my sister and me. From these 13 months, there are 2 photos in our family album. In the first, taken by my uncle, I'm sitting naked on a wicker chair in the sun in the garden at Torre Pellice, in front of my maternal grandparents' house. My whole face is convulsed in laughter, and my mother, behind the chair, leans over me, smiling. In the other, taken by a photographer, I'm standing propped against my mother, who is kneeling in a very loose-fitting dress. I have a small, serious face, small eyes, a small nose, and a small mouth, sparse, smooth hair. On the back of the photograph, my mother has written something referring to me as Marinette. I have no memory of that pretty name. When I was little, I was called Mickey, a nickname given to me by my sister, and my maternal grandmother called me Mina, accentuating the final A in the French way. Maybe my love for the naked sun of fall and spring, when it seems to shine more brightly and boldly behind the trunks and the bare branches, belongs to the 13 months that separate my birth from my sister's. Then every time memories of events not lived or feelings not consciously felt try to take shape in me, I say, that's fine, I'm not afraid. Or I say, I am the way I am, and I want to enjoy it. But mostly I seem to be somewhere else, taking someone else's first steps. On the other hand, I knew very early on where I was, even if my awareness was limited to place and time. My room, our street, the edge of the beach brushed by the sea, and ignorant of movements. In that place and that time, any gesture or word of mine was very important, decisive. I fixed events in a frame where I could immediately confront them. At first, everything seemed frightening, and I was unaware that one could wait or postpone. So I had many fears. I was a coward, my mother said, in which people and places got confused. There were people who led me into difficult situations, places that evoked fearful presences. In every place and in every moment, however, I looked for the means, the act, or the word to resolve my fears by myself. I was also a liar, my mother said. I'm afraid of my mother. I'm afraid of her when she's there, but I want her when she's not there. They tell me that's the love that all children feel for their mother. And their mother loves them because she suffered bringing them into the world. That I don't understand, why she loves them because she suffered. But I understand very well why the mother makes children and that she has to have her belly cut open in the hospital to let them out. When I was born too, my mother went to the hospital. For weeks and weeks before I was born, she vomited. She would stop behind a fence to vomit in peace. She stopped vomiting the night before I was born. I was born several weeks early. That should finally give me some points, but it doesn't, because it was my mother who made me come out early, climbing up on a ladder to arrange some jars of jam in a cupboard. Then I always had green poop and I cried at night. I walked late and talked late. I seemed like an idiot, but the old nyanya who played with me and sang me Russian songs when I woke up at night said I was very intelligent. Adults aren't afraid. That's the difference between them and me. I don't know if they're right not to be afraid. They walk on the ice on the lakes. The ice creaks. Who can assure them it won't break? They leave stoves lighted at night, which then burn down their houses. especially the workers' houses on the outskirts, and the firemen have to rush to put out the fires. My uncle throws me up in the air, throws me up and catches me midair. He's enjoying himself, but can he really catch me? And finally, didn't the adults let even the Zeppelin fall, which one morning, all silvery in the sun, had passed right in front of our windows facing the river Duna? I too will become an adult, but I can't picture it to myself. It worries me, and I think about it often, that I will grow up suddenly in a single night. How will I manage to find clothes the correct length right away the next day? Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. So Marta, what is it that led you to champion the republication of Marina Jarre's work in Italy today after some time since she was first published in Italy? What is it that drew you to her work and why did you do this?
It's a long story because I started to read Marina Jarre as a normal reader when I was very young. I was 21, I think, at the time. And I took a book from my mother's library for a journey. And it was Il silenzio di Mosca, The Silence of Moscow. And I was started because I expected a lot of things. I was expecting a lot of things, and it was completely strange for my expectation. It was a short stories and personal essays collection, very bizarre with a very peculiar writing, and I was very interested in it because I didn't know her name, and I found this writing absolutely powerful. After a lot of books came to me in many ways, by used bookshops and friends or by casualty. So I was a university student at the time, and every book of Jarre that I read was beautiful, and I asked me why she's disappeared. I knew that she was alive in my city at the time, and I didn't know why her name was completely absent by the canon, by the Italian canon, because book after book, and it was novels in majority novels, the autobiographical works are this one, Return to Latvia, and Il silenzio di Mosca, the Silence of Moscow. The others are all novels, and it was a mystery because she was alive and she was disappeared. I want to say that she was published by the most important publisher in Italy, in Einaudi. So it was a double mystery. And I didn't find a true answer to this question in time, because I read the article of Claudio Magris that you mentioned about her harsh reserve, and it's a possibility. It's a possibility because she hated literary circus. She was a teacher and lived very aloof. So I don't know the reasons, but I think she was also writing the wrong book at the wrong time, as she said in a letter that I read after to a friend. She complained with her usual irony, but she was also wary, I think, because she said, I write short stories when nobody's interested in publish short stories, and is the case of Galambra, a beautiful collection of short stories. I write autobiographical novels when nobody's interested in, and it's very interesting in this case because this book is very is a trailblazer in many ways, because there was something that completely lacked in the Italian literary landscape at the time. It's an experiment. It's not just an autobiography, as she called it. It's a memoir with the deepness of the word. In my introduction, I compare it to a Speak Memory of Nabokov and some works by Anierno. Because it's the same thing. It's a lot of images that that built a big, complex, gigantic portrait, and it's wonderful in many ways. But we'll speak about it. And then, so it's a case because. When she died in 2016, I thought that it was important to write about her, and I wrote a short essay about all her work that was published by Il Tascabile, that is literary review but online in Italy. And then the family contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be the curator, because they thought I read her in the right way, in a way that was more that was not identitarian, because of her origins. She's a Valdensian and a Jew, so there were only this kind of works on the work.
Can you talk a little bit about the Valdensians and who they are, and how that shaped her writing? And
okay, they are in the where formed in France in 12th century, and I have problem with the connection. Can you hear me?
No, it's fine. It was a hiccup for a minute.
Okay. That was born in France. Then in the 16th century, they escaped in Italy, in the northwest near Turin, and they were persecuted in many ways by the Catholic, by the kings, the Savoy kings, for reasons of money, not for. And they defended the territory with all what they had. So they are a kind of ancestors, very harsh, very fierce, and very specific in a word like Italy, because they were from France. They spoke and speak French.
And they were Protestant, not Catholic.
Yeah, they were Protestant in a world of Catholics. So they were, again, a minority.
Right. And these are the fathers of the title. There's the father who is Marina Jarre's father, who was a Latvian-born Jew, her mother, a translator of Russian literature into Italian, had met and fallen in love with, but then they divorced. Marina Jarre grew up speaking German as a child in their home in Riga, and then moved abruptly to Italy while she was a young girl, and was suddenly thrown into this world of French-speaking Waldensians who were a Protestant minority in a Catholic nation in a time of fascism. So just to sort of clarify for the audience the great displacement and the different experiences that Marina Jarre had and that impacted on her writing. Okay, so how did this impact on her writing then? All of these abrupt movements and the many languages that she spoke, often in a very marginal position.
She, as a child, Marina Jarre spoke German, and it's her mother tongue. So when she came to Italy, and she writes in Distant Fathers, time entered my life. She was 10, and there was a brutal divorce between her parents, and with a harsh rupture between the family, and the mother impedì. And please.
She basically stole the children. Took the children clandestinely to Italy.
Okay.
Yeah, she was afraid the father would take them, and so she took them first back to her parents.
And then abandoned them in some way, because in a way she worked abroad, so
right.
She left the girls by the grandmother in Italy. So she passed abruptly from a kind of childhood, a kind of life, a kind of language, to two new languages, Italian and French as well, at the same time, and in a completely new world. A word that she knew, but now she has had to live in it. So it was a great trauma, and she tries to elaborate it, to analyze it, to observe it, as many other things in this book, in fascinating ways. And so when she after she started to write, she was much older, and she didn't know Italian very well. She was always worried about her choices. She called her writing style my Ostrogoth, because it was very, it is after the editing, after the many readings, subtly strange, because you see that is not mother tongue, but it's very fascinating for this, because it's a mixture of cultures and words from many languages, like for umbrella, she uses the word parapioggia, that is literally the calque from French parapluie. So it's like a universal language, a great European book, a great European voice. And in Italy, it is very rare, because many of the great writers has developed in a context where they use the local words, the local idiom in the most fascinating ways. But this is very peculiar, and it's also her specificity, I think.
Right. You said that she was always worried that she was writing the wrong book at the wrong time. What is it that makes this book so of the moment now, and that she's found posthumously the right time with this book?
Because I think I personally choose Distant Fathers as the first book to reintroduce Jarre to Italian readers, and fortunately to world readers, because it is a portrait, it is an auto-portrait, but also it is very, very interesting in this time. I think it was published in 1987. She wrote it over many years, and she didn't even think it will never be published, because she knew that nobody was interested in this kind of writing. Now that autofiction of the kinds are in this moment so important, and I don't think it's only a matter of fashion. I think it's a matter of time. We are looking for identities in all manners, and I think she wrote a book that was too anticipatory in a way. She was too soon. Mm-hmm. And now it with this type of writing, with this type of research also about the non appartenenza and
not belonging.
Okay, thank you. Not belonging, and not the research about identity, about humanhood in the various times of life is interesting in a lot of ways.
Right. She writes a lot about aging, about marriage, about being a daughter, being a sister, often a rival-less sister, being a mother, a lover. Can you talk about how she portrays herself as a woman? She's also she's brutally honest, and there's an astringency to the way she presents her relationships, and without any concern about how someone might think or how.
This is very rare, because the first time that I read it, I read her, I was struck by this kind of honesty, because she's brutal.
Yeah, she's not always pleasant.
Yes,
she's not.
You said I read your introduction, translator's note to the book, and I was very interested in a thing you said. You wrote that she is not I am unpleasant narrator.
Yeah.
She mm, doesn't look the complicity of reader. She
Complicity. Yeah.
shows herself in as as a kid, as an adolescent, as self-absorbed, coward, cruel. Not cruel, no, but cruel with herself.
Yeah.
Cruel with her feelings, and she doesn't mask herself.
Yeah, she doesn't mask and yeah, right. She doesn't mask anything.
But I think you can say some about this, because it was a very interesting observation.
Right.
Oh,
also, Francine from the Centro Primo Levi, who's here with us tonight, wrote a very beautiful review that he wrote in uncovering deeply personal and often troubling feelings at every stage of her life. She bears herself naked, resisting any temptation to solicit sympathy from the reader. The honesty of her voice confers powerful integrity to her story, and she has an eye for things that are sometimes absolutely revolting, and that physically revolting in the world around her, and then things that we as the reader might find revolting inside of her or in her observations about her relations with other people. But there are things that we all feel, but we don't necessarily lay them on the page.
Because she describes feelings that are maybe bizarre or strange, but everybody feel their feelings or felt. The very peculiar eye of Jarre is, I think, the subtlety of her memory about childhood, because I remember that she wrote this book at 50 years old, so she remembered incredibly precisely, and she remembered also details of her inner life that was that were astonishing for me. And so the book is structured in 3 parts, and in every part she in some way explores a part of a human life. So that's the childhood, the Latvian childhood, the father, this beautiful, bizarre, absent father, and this mother that was perfect to whom Marina was devoted, but also with her she was enraged, she was jealous but faithful. And I think this faith to her mother, this devotion was the reason for the reason why she almost forgot her father, but she will come back on the subject 20 years later, because it was enormous bonus in her life. And the second part is the adolescence in Italy, with as Anne so intelligently observed in her note, when I said time entered in my life, she wrote, history also entered in her life and enters in the book, because is the history of the family, it's the history of the ancestors, it's the history that is happening right now, because they were the years of war and of fascism, and she is an observer. She feels part in front of events that she doesn't understand fully. She's an adolescent, so she thinks also always about herself. But there is a very important passage in this part when she discovers what she calls the true pity, when she for the first time passes from dry feelings only for people that she can identify with, when she understands that she can pity people that she doesn't belong to, and now there is a kind of scarto and una frattura,
yeah, like
a fracture,
yeah, like a leap or a startle.
Yeah.
And that I think this is the very moment in which she became a writer, even if she didn't write at the time. But I think that is the moment of recognizing the other. I'm explaining myself.
Yeah.
And after the third part, it's very strange, the most strange, and it's as a whole old mature woman, and she starts always in a way that disorients the reader, that you really don't know what she's talking about for a while, and then you're started because she passes in to the real core of the chapter of the section. And here she's old. She analyzes her ordinary life, and then looking at her daughter, comes back abruptly and starts to talk about her life as a very young bride, as a mother of 4 children, and as a teacher of French for all her life till her retirement. And she mixes continuously fantasy, dreams. She is the kind of person that describes dreams, but it's fascinating. It's not annoying. So you are reality, you are the past, you have the past, you have the reality of the days, you have the description, and there are very beautiful pages about growing old as a woman and it's I think there are the among the most beautiful pages in the unique.
And why don't you read now from some of the closing sections of the book? Okay.
Sorry?
Anne, I'd like now for Anne to read some of the closing passages of the book.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing about the chronology. That the three parts, there's the sort of the early part that's childhood, the middle part that's adolescence, and the third part that's basically her as an adult and growing old. But none of the chronology is straightforward. It's constantly shifting. And as Marta said, you often don't know where you are, but then she brings you back to where you are. So it's pretty fascinating as a structure.
It's a weaving structure in some way.
Yeah.
Back again, forth again.
Yeah. This is toward the end of the book. Before me were my life and my book, and more every day it seemed that the former could be transmuted and absorbed into the latter. The pages I wrote took on an irrevocable aspect and oppressed me with an ever-increasing intrusiveness. Typing, I heard my mother cough in the next room and walk along the hall, and my intention to portray her, someone so evasive and diffident, seemed a betrayal on my part. Yet another betrayal. When I went out, I hid the pages that were ready, and once when she asked if I was writing something, I said no. At times, it was as if her presence physically overpowered the possibility of writing. I was realizing that I didn't want to describe her, find suitable terms, recreate important moments. A real stinginess restrained me. I couldn't allow her adventures in which she wasn't my mother, and I tried to crush her under a nagging comparison that I could barely keep from becoming gossip. Happy episodes didn't occur to me, those comic observations, even of herself, in which her sarcasm softened. I didn't know how to evoke her sonorous voice, in which the R's buzzed in a catarrh. I remembered only her silence, or the reverse, cutting opinions and tempestuous scenes. So I hesitated about whether to record facts, diminish, verify, and so why not exorcise, or even give it up? I haven't understood, haven't accepted, and don't know how to represent it. Sink yet again under the ice of the winter sea in Riga. In the end, in that long period of uncertainty, I recognized that the lines I had struggled to produce, erase, rewrite, were nothing but a deep inner cry for help, and would never be able to get past the cry. Of the book that should have contended only with itself, I was making an accomplice. On the other hand, I was also turning it into a monument on which conclusions were carved that would comfort and justify myself. A brilliant and intrusive restorer who joined together the Gothic stone hands of the Earl of Arundel and his Countess wife on their tomb in Chichester Cathedral may perhaps move a public that consoles itself with the peacefulness of death. But that remains a work of restoration that does not concern either the living or the dead. And really, doesn't seeking peace through a book amount to another misrepresentation? Life alone can give peace and war, and the book has only to tell about that. And so I wrote and rewrote, seeking the path from me to what I wrote, and from there to the reader, and then from the reader back to the book, extricating me from the writing and the writing from me. Of those years, I can reconstruct moments and brief periods in my mother's last months that were on the whole serene. She and I were in better health. Johnny, her husband, was as always careful and patient. The children were available and kind. Little by little, as age weakened her, my mother began to trust me. Once she praised one of my books and regretted that it hadn't had its deserved success. A few weeks before her death, she asked my sister, who had come to see her, "Where's my daughter?" "But I'm here," said Cece. "Not you, the other one," she replied. Ill, in bed, and cared for by me, she said suddenly one evening, "Certainly the Lord spared you nothing." It was the only time I heard her name God. Then she added, hesitating, searching for the words, "First your father, then 4 children to bring up, and then me." She broke off, and after 2 minutes of silence concluded, "You were," as if speaking of something in the past that she hadn't realized before, "you were the Waldensian and Cece the Jew." And with those words, with which she intended certainly to do justice to me and perhaps thank me, she separated us yet again in her heart. There isn't much I can add except this. There was certainly a fracture in her, again, a rift, an estrangement between the moral rule that she felt obliged to transmit and her own nature. Released from that duty, hadn't the same obligation led her, now a European who had married a Jew, to bring me from Riga to the Waldensian church of Torre Pellice so that I could be baptized? No longer bound, I was saying, by that promise made by others before her, to whom not voluntarily she belonged, my mother happily loved my children. But between her and me was the rule that unintentionally, from a distance and secretly, she had to hand down to me. Why she wished to impose and pass it on to me in particular, I don't know. I could try saying, entering just for a moment into the matter of those mysteries of love that I discovered to be impenetrable as I was reading the description of my sister in a white wig. Because she was unable to love me. Was I not both the proof of her failing the rule and at the same time the cause, blameless but undeniable, of her unhappy marriage? Or rather, it's unlikely you'll love someone who reproduces, well or badly, a model that oppresses you and that you compulsively hand down, the one you raised to be your rival. In me, she rejected both what lay outside the rule or contradicted it, and the feared norm that she saw gradually solidify and take shape in my actions, even though at first sight it was deviant and new. The women in my life were seldom and reluctantly women for me. My grandmother empathizing with me for a future inevitable shared injustice, while she provided the pad for my first period, as much as my mother, who gave birth to me and nursed me. But the men, the fathers, were father and mother to me, example and touchstone. And so the conclusion is the opposite of what I stated to my friend that night on the Po. I don't know women, I know only men. Wasn't it the father my mother as an old woman feared in me? Wasn't it the fathers in her I was unfaithful to?
Thank you. So I hope from this reading and this discussion, you can see what it is that excited us so much about this book and why we're publishing a second book by Marina Jarre in 2022, again in Anne Goldstein's translation. Marta, can you speak briefly a little bit about how the republication of Distant Fathers has changed Marina Jarre's reputation in Italy, or has it brought her a new following, a greater awareness in the Italian imagination?
It has brought a new following, and it is a little movement because it is the pandemic, and it was published in March, so it was a period of a lot of publications after the pandemic, the big wave of pandemic, and it had a lot of reviews, a lot of interested reviews by young critics also. So I was happy. And the thing that interested me, it is that there is chart, a kind of chart by readers, and every three months about the new publications. So there is a chart of quality of books. There is narrative, there is non-fiction, there is poetry, etc. And I saw that in narrative there was a lot of books freshly published, as obviously, but there was in the first 20 places, I don't remember the exact place, there was Distant Fathers. So a lot of people choose to use their only vote, for a book of a person who died in 6 years ago, for a published book. So they say that in a way it is more interesting than the new books. So I think it's a start, and we'll see, because I think that we are building something, and there is a lot of interviews. I have some festivals in in person.
Okay. Okay.
In August, in September, about Marina Jarre. They're asking me to explain her to the public. So I think it's a start, and I want that the new publication will be of all her works, and I think because I want to her to be a classic, to gain her role, because she deserves.
We have just a few minutes left, but Lydia, we can have questions now from the audience if there are questions.
Yes, I would invite everyone to start to ask questions through the chat tool. You can write and I will submit the question. In the meantime, I just received a first one while you were talking, and it comes from James, and he was asking perhaps and Goldstein could talk a bit about the pan-European language and the challenges that Jarre's language present to a translator.
Well, every writer presents challenges, but and I must apologize for my pronunciation of the German words. But her writing is very, it's always throwing you off, I think, in some way. You know, it's not smooth. The syntax is sometimes very complicated, and you sort of don't know where you are. I mean, in the way that you don't know where you are in her meaning, you also sometimes don't know where you are in her syntax or in her actual sentences. So I would say that they sort of embody that, really that feeling of displacement. And I think that I felt that more with her than I felt with other writers, of not quite knowing where you are, which you sort of don't quite know where you are in some way.
Well, I have another question from Victor. I was curious to know if Jarre spoke Latvian as well.
She spoke a little bit, I think, didn't she, Marta?
Yes, a little bit, but it wasn't the language talk in the family.
Yeah.
So because her father was Russian. Her
father was Russian, I think, right?
Sorry?
The father's mother was Russian?
Yeah. They were Russian Jews. Yeah. So they spoke, I think, in Russian when they were in family, but she didn't see the family, the father's family in many occasions. So I don't know if I don't know if she was a very Latvian speaker, because she went to a German school too.
So I see her son Pietro is shaking his head. So
Pietro.
Okay.
I would have a question as well for Michael, actually. I was wondering what are the elements of their writing that brought you to decide to publish her? Because you were saying Marina Jarre is now again back to Italy as well at the same time. So it's a kind of courageous, really brave decision for a publisher as well. So I would like to know how this happened to you to decide about.
The personal story that she tells, I think, is one that's very, very fascinating, and the displacement and the abrupt shift in culture, mm-hmm. languages, and the Europeanness. I think that's something. Also, the intersection of a very personal life with the broader political changes in Europe, and how that impacted upon her life is something that has always interested me. And to see this so beautifully manifested in a novel was extremely appealing, as well as just the qualities of the writing. So,
Thanks. So I don't see any other question. If there are any other questions, please let me know. In the meantime, I would like to say to all of you, now I'm in trouble to decide if reading this book also in English. I would be happy to see how Anne work on the translation. And I mean, it's such an inspiring situation when also the author was so divided between different languages, and this always makes the writing more intense and the personality much richer. So it's very interesting to, I believe, to all of you, especially when you move abroad, you have this idea of your brain just changing in many ways. So I'm really sure that everyone understood the value of this kind of work in Marina Jarre book. And you can see actually the book at the back of Michael, because I don't have my real copy here with me, unfortunately. Thank you, Michael. This to let you, thank you, and amazing. We are a great team. Because I don't see any other question now, I would say, oh, just another one, and then I let you go, guys. I have one from Marina. Question to the translator. Did you try to evoke the pan-European quality of their writing into English?
Not consciously. I mean, I find it very hard to do things like that consciously. I mean, I hope that it somehow comes through by being faithful to to her writing. I mean, to her Italian. I mean, it is Italian after all that she's writing. So, I mean, I would hope that by being faithful to her Italian, the quality of her Italian is somehow conveyed into English.
Great, thank you, Anne.
I might be, but
we have a last question from David. How did she come to speak German as a child when her father was Russian Jewish and her mother French speaking Italian? This is a good question.
Frankly, I don't know.
I think that in Latvian Jews, I think frequently did speak German.
I think
that Riga was a very multicultural city,
yeah, exactly.
in these years. So it's they had a Fräulein, a nanny who was German. So it was it was normal, I think, in this kind of world. It was a very strange and interesting word, the Latvia before the war, before the invasion. And it's very interesting that Latvians after will participate with much enthusiasm to the extermination of Jews. So when the Nazis came, and she talked about it with sharpness in return to Latvia. She uses documents in a very interesting ways to show what Latvians did to, and the responsibility never taken. So the book will be, Distant Fathers will be translated in Latvian. And I asked myself when Return to Latvia will be published. What we
interesting.
Distant Fathers is also appearing in Spanish, German, Dutch, Turkish, many other languages now.
Amazing.
Publication.
Congratulations to all of you. And with this said, I would again thank you, all of you. Thanks to Michael Wise to keep working on this kind of projects. As a store manager of Rizzoli Bookstore, I am in a way ambassador of Italian literature and Italian language in New York. So I really appreciate New Vessel is a publisher also for Ortese. So I hope we will have again events like this, and thank you, Marta, also to work on this kind of interesting project with Marina Jarre. And I learned that you are working on many others, so we can't wait to read Distant Fathers, and of course the following you will work on it, and we hope to see and Michael working on the translation again for the international audience. So thank you to all of you for this amazing event. I want to just to remind to all the audience that the book is available at Rizzoli Bookstore between Broadway and 26. Please come to visit us at the store. We are open from 11 to 7 every day, Monday to Sunday. So we are back together with New York, and is also available online, of course, at rizzolibookstore.com. Thank you again for everyone to stay with us tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Livia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And Marta. Right. Okay.
Bye all.